to episode 489 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Andrew Swafford.
In today's episode, we're going to be talking about movies that we saw at some point in the recent future in part one. and in part two, we're going to be kicking off our two-part Patreon pick series with a pair of Laurel and Hardy, one short, one feature, picked by Patreon patron pickin' Ron
Extraordinaire.
Hayes. Yeah, we're gonna do the Music Box from 1932, which won. Fun fact to get us into the episode: it won the very first short film Oscar in 1932, and then Sons of the Desert from 1933.
Yeah, Ron is a very long time listener, as he'll tell you. And
oh, will he tell you?
And we are very grateful for him. He's probably kicked more money into our Patreon than anybody who ever has. We have a nice little ribbing relationship with Ron. He's not going to like what we think about Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get that out. A minute 20. A minute 20 into the episode.
Yeah, building some suspense.
Buckle up, kids. And we're going to, I know Ron. I'm going to make fun of him a little bit. So, Ron, not only are we going to hate, we're not going to hate.
He makes fun of us all the time.
Yeah, he makes fun of us all the time. Well, one, I'm hoping, let me go ahead and put this to rest, Ron. Andrew's not going to complain about the feminist readings of Laurel and Hardy. I think he's going to get past that and just complain about stuff.
I mean, there are feminist readings that one could make of Laurel and Hardy. We'll get there, but I think there's plenty of other things worth complaining about.
Yeah, no. So I'll read. We'll start part two. I'll read Ron's note.
That was a nice note. I appreciate that note.
Yeah, but we're. This is why we don't get a lot of Patreon entries, because they're just they're going to make fun of us the entire time.
I have never made fun of someone who has written into us who is not Ron.
That's fair. I think I could agree. I think I could claim to that as well. I mainly just make fun of Ron. It's a pastime. Anyway, let's do the movies that we saw in recent weeks. I'm not even going to say this week.
Yeah. In memory.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. In between the last episode and this one, the only movie I've really watched is Heat, which honestly is enough. And I was going to go on this whole bit where I was just not going to ever log anything else on Letterboxd again. And it was just Zach watched Heat and he's done.
Yeah.
Movies are done. Then we got to this episode and here we are. But one that I caught before in the pre-Heat days is A Real Pain. This is the latest. This is the latest. Pain. Let me tell you, we got those jokes locked in. This one is written and directed by Jesse Eisenberg. This is his second film, I think, that he's directed. Let me just double check. Yeah, this is the second film that he's directed. He also did When You Finish Saving the World with Julianne Moore and the kid from Stranger Things.
I remember hearing good things about that.
Yeah, but this one, Eisenberg stars in it as well. It stars him and Kieran Culkin, fresh off Succession. Mm-hmm. It also includes some small work from Jennifer Grey, which was nice to see. Always nice to see Jennifer Grey still hot. I don't know if it's a hot take.
Jennifer Grey is. Who's Jennifer Grey?
Baby from Dirty Dancing.
Oh, okay.
She didn't get backed in the corner in this movie either. I don't know. She still looks good. That's my Jennifer Grey take for the movie. Yeah. But this one, you have two cousins played by Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin. And they're recently their grandmother has died, and they both kind of had really close connections with their grandmother, especially the Kieran Culkin character Benji. He was very, very close with their grandmother, who immigrated from Poland to America during World War II. And so in this movie, she's just died, I think, a number of months ago. And I guess in her will, she's left a trip for them where they're going to go and kind of do, I think that's what they call it, is like a heritage tour of Poland, and kind of they start in Warsaw and see like kind of do a touristy tour walk kind of thing of Warsaw. They go to other different little small cities, and then they end going to a concentration camp. And then the two cousins are going to peel off at the end of the trip and go to like the little town that she's from and visit her where she lived. But it's kind of one of those, you have two very distinct characters. David, the Eisenberg character, is very like buttoned up. He has a wife, he has a son, he has, a pretty steady job where he's like he does like digital advertising or whatever, and he's like trying to describe it to Kieran Culkin's character, and he's like, yeah, like those pop-up ads that you get when you like want to work, get on a website, like that's I make those. And Kieran Culkin's just like, oh, so you like the stuff that annoys people. And he's like, well yeah, but we try not to say that. He's just very much like he's kind of, since we're in the Laurel and Hardy episode, he's the straight character to the funny guy. Then you have Benji, the Kieran Culkin.
I think it's debatable who the funny guy is in Laurel and Hardy.
We gotta save that for. But you have Kieran Culkin. He plays Benji. He's very much like, going by the beat of his own drum. He seems in and out of jobs. He's living in his mom's basement. The first time you see him, he's like all ready to go, just like sitting in the airport. And you're kind of like, oh, like he's ready for the trip, and mentions that, oh yeah, I've been here for a few hours. You gotta be at the airport early. It's just great to like meet people there. And which kind of strikes Eisenberg as a little bit strange, but then becomes a little bit much more sadder. Becomes very sad by the end, where like they've gone on this whole trip and they've kind of reconnected to a degree. And Eisenberg's like, yeah, like hey, come, why don't you just come home with me? Like you can stay the night. We'll have dinner. We'll just talk. You can interact with my wife and my kid. Like they would love to see you, etc. And he's like, no, I'm just gonna stay here. And you kind of just leave on this very kind of ominous note of where he's just kind of going to stay in the airport and kind of continue to drift amongst the different personalities that he meets, because that's kind of what Benji does. That's he's a lot of the movie is Benji is very outgoing. He like immediately is able to like slide into like different dynamics and different groups, and like really assimilate himself with people as just kind of this friendly, bubbly personality, because they're going on this tour, and you have a tour guide, and you have like, I think one couple, and then like 2 or 3 other individuals who are along the tour with the Eisenberg and Culkin characters. And so he immediately is able to like slide in. He's joking around. He's getting people to kind of have fun. There's this one scene where he wants Jesse Eisenberg to come and like do a pose next to these soldiers at the statue in Warsaw. And Jesse Eisenberg's like, no, it seems like a little bit disrespectful. He's no, like we're just kind of having fun. Like we're gonna, and then you gradually see like more and more of the people give Jesse Eisenberg their phone to take a picture, and they're all joining into this big big kind of hang out at this, where they're doing different poses and just kind of giggling and having fun, and everybody's doing it, including the tour guide, and Jesse Eisenberg's kind of standing back just taking all the pictures. And that's a lot of the dynamic. Is Benji's very outgoing, he gets along with people very easily, and David's not. Like he's very like reserved. You can tell he kind of wants to be like Benji and be able to connect with people, but he kind of struggles, and he says the wrong things, and he gets very nervous. And so that also creates this tension between the two cousins, is that I think that they seem to be, you're kind of alluded to, that they're very, they were very close growing up, and they kind of have drifted apart as like they've become more adults. And that was always the thing that David struggled with Benji. Is Benji was so outgoing, was able to make friends really quickly, was able to kind of become the life of the party, and that's just never been accessible to David. But at the same time, Benji's really difficult to be around. When he's not, you can tell he kind of has, I wouldn't say necessarily like it's bipolar disorder, but like really deep depressive episodes that he'll fall into. And there's a lot of times where he just kind of gets like locked in on something, and it becomes and he uses the power that he has to become the life of the party to completely like just drown the party. There's one scene that I literally was like squirming in my seat like it was like a horror movie. Like, I think the most horrifying scene in movies this year will be this scene in A Real Pain, where they're at this graveyard and everybody's kind of looking around. The tour guide's sitting there giving like little facts and things about like the different graves in the graveyard, in the cemetery itself in the town. And Benji just gets in his head that like he doesn't want to hear any more of these facts. He doesn't want to hear any more of this. He doesn't want to hear about the stuff around him on this tour from the tour guide. And he has this
why are you always talking?
Yeah, that's pretty much what happens. He pretty much does that. And it's just like I'm like sitting there and he's just talking about how, he's like, yeah, just like let people live in the moment. Like, let's just like, let us like explore on our own. Like, you don't have to complete like narrate everything that we're doing, and he's just saying this. And I like wanted to like jump on the screen and just be like, sir, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry. This is the most like secondhand awkwardness I felt in a very long time. And like, you can tell David's like, this is kind of where, in the relationship, this is where David has to come in. Like, people don't necessarily gravitate to David, but he's kind of the one to be like, oh yeah, I'm sorry about him. Like, he just kind of gets this way. And the only way he can kind of like get any connection with people is through like, parsing what's going on with Benji. And yeah, overall I really liked it. I think it's very subtly directed, but I think Eisenberg does a really good job. The script really sharp. This is even though Eisenberg's in the movie is owned by Kieran Culkin, like to the point where like he probably will get nominated for an Oscar. I don't know, probably lead or whatever. He's really good. It's one of the better.
He's a fantastic actor. I would love to see him in more stuff.
Yeah, and this is kind of, I'm the thing I was worried about with him is like, I think you can kind of say that he's kind of developed this persona, like this kind of like, this is who he is from Succession, and to a degree, he's doing like Roman Roy to a degree, but not necessarily as like viciously. Like, it's never vicious. It's more just kind of, you can tell that there's just like a piece loose or a piece missing, with this performance. And he's always kind of had like that fast talking, like sarcastic, ironic personality. You think of like his performance in like Scott Pilgrim versus the World, like he's very much doing that whole thing. In this one though, I think he's able to kind of wield that into a very like really sad character, but one that like you have these moments of like he's super fun, and you have these moments where you're just like he's awful, and you're kind of viewing things through the lens of David, who just not really he just seems unable to kind of accept the roles that they are, and like kind of just find peace in like who he is. It's kind of like he's still kind of chasing Benji to a degree. But I think Kieran Culkin's wonderful. I think it's a really strong movie. The scene when they go to the concentration camp is really powerful. Like, a lot of like you're not hearing the tour guide anymore. The music's kind of died down to a degree. It's just very like it's very solemn. It's very respectful. It's it's a lot of like the tour guide will come in and be like, this is what this place is, and then it'll be quiet and you kind of get a view of the room and you're watching it through the experiences of these different people. But I really recommend it. It should be, I think it might be done on its run like in theaters, but I'll be on like a streaming service or be able to be available to rent. But I really liked it. Real Pain. Yeah, let's get Kieran Culkin leading some more movies.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I'm gonna toss it over to you, Andrew.
Sure. Well, I also want to hype up a movie that is done with its theatrical run, but will probably be on the various VOD services soon, and that is Bird, the new movie by Andrea Arnold. We talked about it when we did our little dispatch from TIFF, so I apologize if I restate anything that I said in that part one. But by the way, we should mention that we should have mentioned at the beginning of this episode. If you're listening to this, our TIFF coverage is live on cinematary.com. So that's always kind of our biggest writing dump of the year. If you enjoy reading our takes on films, that is, it's not something we do a whole lot anymore. But I always enjoy getting the chance to kind of go long and kind of get into the details on movies that we catch at TIFF. This was probably my favorite movie that I saw at the festival, to be honest. I think it's Andrea Arnold's best movie. It is kind of a rewrite of sorts of an earlier movie of hers, Fish Tank, a very similar kind of coming of age story.
I was gonna ask, I think you were you might have said this was the best of hers at TIFF, but I feel like it was kind of straddling the line. Did the second viewing kind of push it over?
Yeah, definitely. I got a chance to see it in theaters a couple of weeks ago, and definitely holds up for me. You're always a little worried watching something at a festival, if you're really high on it, that you're just kind of like falling prey to festival hype. But no, I thought this is really, really great. For folks who are unaware of the premise, it is a coming of age story about a young girl named Bailey. She lives in kind of the slums of England, as many of Andrea Arnold's movies take place in. And it's kind of about her relationship with her dad, I would say, but it's also kind of about her relationship with her brother and her relationship with this kind of gender non-conforming drifter who rolls through town. What's the name of that guy, that European art house guy that pops up in this movie?
Franz Rogowski.
Franz Rogowski? Yeah. That guy's a fantastic actor. Love his performance in Transit. Really love his performance in this as well. He is this again kind of like gender vague person named Bird, who is also kind of like trying to figure out something related to their family. And so they and Bailey have kind of this mutual mentoring relationship as they both kind of like teach each other like how to take care of themselves in various ways. But the plot of the movie, not very high concept. This is a very kind of like grounded, gritty slice of life film. But it is presented like formally, aesthetically in pretty thrilling ways, I think. Visually, Andrea Arnold is kind of like going back and forth between like really shaky, really abrasive handheld camera work, and then at other times these really serene moments of peace and montage. The protagonist of the movie, Bailey, is a little bit of a cinematographer herself. She just like takes little videos of serene moments in nature that she comes across and replays them, plugged up to her projector in her room, just kind of projecting onto the wall. She makes herself a little like tent of bed sheets and just kind of like tries to block out the rest of the world and rewatch these loops of, they might be butterflies, they might be birds, they might be some random person she came across. And so the movie has this really nice balance of like motion and like visual chaos. I've seen some people on Letterboxd take against it because they find the shaky cam to be distasteful, but I think that I don't know, we're maybe a little traumatized from the overuse of shaky cam around the days of like the first Hunger Games movie way back. That was just like a really popular thing for a little while, and I think that it can be done in an artistic way. It can be done in a way that kind of like adds to the work, and instead of just being like kind of a gimmick that people use, and I think Andrea Arnold uses it in a really great way here. The shaky camera is always feels like it is emphasizing something about the way the character is moving, or the particular brand of chaos in the scene that it happens to be capturing. But also, the like soundscape of this movie is incredible. I am very biased here because it is the first score by my favorite electronic artist, Burial. I'm wearing a Burial shirt right now. And it's a very sparse score. There's probably only a grand total of like 20 minutes of score in the whole movie. But it's kind of stitching together this larger like audio tapestry that Andrea Arnold has put together. There's just so much music in this movie, and it's all from these different genres and eras and styles. This is a movie where you listen at one point to almost the entirety of Cotton Eye Joe, and it like doesn't feel out of place in like the sonic world of this movie. And just a couple of scenes ago, you were listening to Coldplay's Yellow, and then you have all of these just absolutely gorgeous instrumental pieces by Burial, some of which are sampling things like wind chimes and church bells. Other times he's bringing in these like really panic-inducing like trap hi-hats, and he's always doing really incredible things with drones, with pads, with kind of this like slowed down, chopped up R&B that he's always playing with. And there's just really nothing like the sonic landscape that Burial creates. And I think that it is right at home here in Andrea Arnold's cinematic world, where music is so important to characters. You see characters listen to songs in full, and you kind of like see the way they engage with the songs and kind of like connect communally with one another through like the shared experience of listening to the song. And it's just a movie that I feel like takes music very seriously, and kind of like sees it as a thing that enriches people's lives, as does cinema. There's the whole thing about Bailey watching loops of nature in her room, but she also uses cinematography as kind of a defense mechanism as well when she needs to like film somebody that she doesn't trust, or somebody that she needs to kind of take some sort of action against. That video evidence has like a practical purpose. So there's just there's a lot going on in this movie. There are other things that I could talk about too, especially regarding the family stuff and like the gender stuff that seems to be going on in the movie. Should also mention the great acting work by Barry Keoghan, who has just kind of like made a name for himself in the last decade or so, just finding new weird little guys to play. And in this movie, he's playing a guy named Bug, who is like an extremely irresponsible father, has kids all over town, and is covered head to toe in bug tattoos.
And constantly jetting around town on his motor scooter.
Yeah, he's always just like careening down some street in a motor scooter, blasting punk music. And also throughout a lot of this movie, attempting this hilarious get-rich-quick scheme in which he is trying to sell the slime off of a Colorado toad that is said to have like psychedelic properties, and it only slimes to sincere music. So that's why you listen to Coldplay's Yellow at one point. So yeah, fantastic movie.
He's honestly really fun in that movie. He's not a great person, but he's very entertaining.
Yeah, the movie, like your experience with that character can shift really wildly moment to moment, because when he is being a domineering dad, which he does at times, he's genuinely very scary. And partially that's just because Bailey is so young. She's so small. She's not exactly helpless. She's tough, but it doesn't feel great to be in the shoes of a girl that small with a dad as like irrational and obnoxious to be around as her dad is. But he's also kind of a goober too, and she kind of like sees him as somewhat silly and eye-rolly at times. And they have this interesting, multifaceted, nuanced relationship that can't be completely reduced to, she is an abused daughter and he is an abusive father. Like it is, it's a thorny relationship. I think that there's a great deal of humanism in Andrea Arnold's movies. She seems to empathize with just about all of her characters. So loved Bird. I think people should check it out when it comes out on VOD. I also wanted to throw some attention at a film made by a friend of mine. So I should give the caveat before I talk about this movie. I do know the person who made this movie, so I am definitely biased.
Biased review coming.
Biased review incoming. But I did like the movie, genuinely. The movie is called Angel of Light. It is by Crew Smith, Knoxville native, UTK alum. Similar stomping grounds to the Cemetery Podcast way back in the day. And he just finished his first feature, and it premiered at Knoxville's current Film Fest, Film Fest Knox, run by another friend of the pod, Darren Hughes, alongside his old Public Cinema collaborator, Paul Harrell. So we're big fans of what they did back in the Public Cinema days, and we're still very tight with them. So again, very biased review, but Angel of Light is a movie that is currently playing at another film festival, and you can rent it on that film festival's online platform if you so wish. It is a movie set in Knoxville, Tennessee, and it is about modern Christian culture, I would say. Like that's maybe the best way to describe like the world you're in. The main character works at a used car dealership, and his wife is a big Christian church lady, and she wants him to be going to church more often. And he at one day has a run-in at his car dealership with the coolest youth pastor you've ever seen. He's not actually a youth pastor, but he's given big Protestant youth pastor vibes. He's got like tattoos and piercings and things like that. He just like seems really understanding and down to earth. He seems like a cool guy. Seems like a good guy, right? And he's coming and speaking at this guy's wife's church this Wednesday. And so dude goes to church. I love the way the church is depicted in this movie, because there is just a particular kind of like non-denominational Christian church that has popped up in the last, 2 decades in the South, where like there's not really like a pulpit so much as there's a stage. Some of these churches were they were repurposed movie theaters and music venues and things like that. And they always got this like blue and purple like fluorescent lighting, or not fluorescent lighting, but it kind of like soft neon lighting on the like back wall in front of the person speaking. And it's just like they are trying really hard to look like they're not a church. They're like this cool place where teens hang out, but it's just a guy talking about how Jesus saved his life and all that. Not that there's anything wrong with being a Christian or having a religious experience with Jesus or whatever. But like, there's something like fundamentally corny about this kind of church that Cru Smith captures very well. There's also something fundamentally ugly about the interior spaces of people's homes that he captures extremely well too. Everything is just like beige. You don't have quite like live, laugh, love stuff on the wall, but it's like in the ballpark of that. He's not going straight for the cliche, but these houses, the insides of these houses look absolutely hideous in a way that we actually talked about this a little bit. Was it last week or the week before when we were talking about Rap World? Rap World also really captures how ugly like interior suburban spaces often feel, and Cru does an excellent job with that particular bit of like modern Southern culture. And I guess I should also mention that this is not like just a social realist drama. It is kind of a genre movie. Cru is both a big fan of kind of exploitative, schlocky genre films, in the same way that he's a fan of like Paul Schrader's transcendental style and all the filmmakers that Paul Schrader was pulling from, like Carl Dreyer and Bresson and people like that. And Cru marries those things in a really interesting way. There's some, I'm not sure exactly how much to say because I think it is a movie that has some cool twists in it, but let's say there's some supernatural stuff going on in this movie. It takes religion and religious mythology somewhat seriously, though Cru is also like doing a pulpy genre thing with it. So it's hard to say exactly how seriously he's taking some of it. But, if you grew up raised religious in the South, I think that there will be parts of this movie that really resonate with you, that really feel true, whether that be emotionally or just like aesthetically. It's a movie that you're not going to be able to predict where it is going. There are lots of twists and turns along the way. Angel of Light. It is a good movie, in my opinion, but again, very biased. If you want to watch it, you can. One of two ways you can watch it. You could either look it up on Instagram. Cru has an account for the film called Angel of Light Film, all one word. And there's a link in their bio that will take you right to where you can rent it right now. You could also go to eventive.com, EVENTIVE, and search for Angel of Light, and it'll come up. I don't think this movie is going to be widely available for long. It is still on the festival circuit. He does not have a distributor for the film yet. So it is currently showing at a film festival that is kind of allowing people to rent it wherever. But I don't really know how long that window is going to be open. So it's $10 to rent the film. I hope you will do it because it's a cool movie. Definitely a side of Knoxville that you don't see on the big screen all that often. And hope the best for Cru. Hope this movie finds a distributor and more people get to see it. It was real good. Angel of Light.
All right, sounds like a good one. Well, let's we'll take that and we'll jump into a break before we talk Laurel and Hardy in part 2. Just stick around. And we are back with part 2 of episode 489 of Cinematary. In this part, we will be doing a Patreon pick for our friend Ron Hayes, 1932's The Music Box and 1933's Sons of the Desert. And let's read why Ron wants us to watch these films. Hello, Cinematarians. I had the good fortune to discover Cinematary in the spring of 2015 and have listened to every episode since. And yet, approaching your 500th episode, you have not seen fit to devote even a single one to the greatest comedy duo ever to glorify the silver screen. I refer, of course, to those masters of mirth, those gestures of genius, those saints of slapstick, Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy. This outrageous omission must end immediately.
Wow. And so the alliteration keeps coming.
I know. It's really putting me on a struggle, I'll be honest. And so for my Patreon pick, I will request Sons of the Desert 1933, considered their finest feature, despite being only 68 minutes long, and supplement it with the 29-minute short, The Music Box, which won the Academy Award for Best Short Subject of 1932. Thank you. I will close now with the words of Kurt Vonnegut, another comic genius whose 1976 novel Slapstick is dedicated to Stan and Ollie, whom he called, quote, two angels of my youth. Because, quote, they never failed to bargain in good faith with their destinies and were screamingly funny and adorable on that account. Thank you, Ron. All right, so we're going to do The Music Box first. The Music Box is directed by James Parrott from a script by H.M. Walker. The film stars Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy. Gravity, an impatient professor, and a sassy nursemaid hinder movers trying to deliver a player piano to an upstairs address. The Music Box, like Ron mentioned, The Music Box won the first Academy Award for Best Live-Action Short Comedy in 1932. In 1997, it was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. The Steps, 133 with multiple landings, which are the focal point of The Music Box, still exist in the Silver Lake district of Los Angeles near the Laurel and Hardy Park. The steps are the public staircase that connects Vendome Street at the base of the hill with Descanso Drive, the top of the hill. A plaque commemorating the film was set into one of the lower steps. Yeah, sorry for butchering my Los Angeles. I don't know Los Angeles roads. The steps can also be seen in the Charlie Chase silent comedy Isn't Life Terrible from 1925, during a scene in which Chase is trying to sell fountain pens to Fay Ray. Charlie Chase, who is also used for a gag similar to Hats Off in The Music Box, in Ice Cold Cocos in 1926, a Billy Bevan comedy short directed by Del Lord. I love these name drops in this. It's like oh yeah, Billy Bevan, Del Lord, yeah.
This movie's got Billy Bevan.
Yeah, I feel like I'm reading something from Martin Short right now. The steps are also referenced in the Laurel and Hardy Love Affair, a short story by Ray Bradbury, as the meeting place of the couple in the story who call each other Ollie and Stan, in homage to the comedic duo. The film is a partial remake of their lost silent short, Hats Off, from 1927, directed by Hale Yates, which utilized a washing machine instead of a piano and was filmed at the same location and is today considered a lost film. Hats Off was itself remade by Edgar Kennedy in 1945 as It's Your Move, again directed by Yates, by utilizing a different staircase although located in the same vicinity where the Music Box steps are in Silver Lake. Man, they just were like, this concept's gold.
Everybody wants to know about these steps.
These steps. I can't stop talking about them. The Music Box was also dubbed in Spanish with the lengthy title No cualquiera aguante un piano, mucho menos una pianola. The English translation being, not anyone can load a piano, let alone a pianola. It's a good title.
Snappy.
The short was popular with audiences in 1932 and generally well received by critics. After previewing The Music Box in late February that year, the New York trade paper The Film Daily assured theater owners that the comedy, quote, is up to the Laurel Hardy standard and should score easily. Motion Picture Herald, after previewing the film in March, described it as great fun and noted, unusually long for a comedy short, it is well worth the extra length. And the Chicago-based movie magazine Motion Picture is even more enthusiastic about the comedy in its June 1932 issue. Laurel and Hardy's latest short lasts 30 minutes, and it is a fast and funny half hour. Perhaps they got their idea from Charlie Chaplin, who once was screamingly funny as a piano mover's helper, but don't hold that against them. They have improved on Chaplin, which is no easy task. Not with a pair as absurdly, ridiculously, and insanely awkward as these two. The gags are almost as side-splitting as they are. All right, real quick before we dig into this, a little on Laurel and Hardy. How familiar are you with Laurel and Hardy?
Not very. I looked on Letterboxd to see if I had seen anything by them, and I had seen one short of them as a duo and one short of just Laurel. He was doing like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde riff or something. But my memory of both of those shorts is basically nothing, which tells me that they weren't very memorable. But I don't know that much about them as performers. I know they're like vaudeville guys, right?
Well, so in my research today, aka looking at their Wikipedia page, just a brief overview. So Stan Laurel, he's English. He came to England. He came in 1909. He was employed by the same comedy group, or the comedy guy Fred Karno, who employed Charlie Chaplin. And Stan Laurel was actually Chaplin's understudy. Oh. And in 1912, that troupe came to tour the United States, and Laurel was with Chaplin on that. So Chaplin and Laurel got to America at the same time. And pretty much Hardy's a similar story. Like he was getting into stuff. He did different like films and shorts and things like that. But prior to being part of the comedy duo, he was just kind of, a little like a Chaplin imitator, or, like kind of just like that quirky dude on the side type thing. It was, he didn't really stand out as much. Then Oliver Hardy, he was born in Harlem, Georgia, Harlem, Georgia, up there near Augusta. And he was a stage singer. He worked in a movie house in Milledgeville, Georgia. So noted Milledgeville people are Flannery O'Connor and Oliver Hardy. And he went by the nicknames Ollie and Babe. And I like I feel
like Oliver Hardy could be a character in a Flannery O'Connor story.
100%. or Babe Hardy, which is how he went. And he got the nickname Babe by an Italian barber in Jacksonville, Florida, who would rub his face with talcum powder and say, "That's a nice baby," which I don't think is true. Which I don't think is true, but I just like that was in that was like, this is part of his.
Did he do it with an Italian accent? Do we know that?
Italian barber. I don't know. That's a nice baby. Yeah, whatever.
Man, well, we had our resident Italian Grace Winburn to weigh in on whether or not that's racist.
It's Italians. But so he kind of came up doing stuff in Jacksonville. He was like in the Florida scene, the Florida film industry scene for a long time, and then that fell apart. And
the renowned Florida film scene.
Yeah, it falls apart again in like the early 2010s as well. But they moved to California. It's kind of the same thing. Like he's doing like shorts and things like that, and then they get connected through Hal Roach. Who found them, and it's kind of like the rest is history. They give I was in the Wikipedia, they gave this whole thing about how there's something with a leg of lamb. I don't know. It didn't seem like a very interesting origin story. I want to also, mainly the other thing I want to read is different names for the comedy duo around the world. In Poland, it's Flippy Flap.
Flippy Flap.
Flap and Flap. Flip and Flap.
Flip and Flap.
In Italy, in a nice baby, that one.
Yeah.
Stanlio e Olio.
Okay.
I like that. Okay. I like that one.
Has a nice ring to it.
Yeah. Absolute favorite. Absolutely. I can't. I think this is actually. I take this back. Number 3. This is my number 3 favorite.
Oh, okay.
I can't pronounce it. It's in like Indian, and it right now I'm just seeing like the script of it. I don't see like what that text would be pronounced as, but it translates to Fatso and the Crybaby. Really?
Okay.
I like that one.
Accurate, I guess.
I guess so. In Thailand, their name for them translates to the clumsy, fat, and thin. Which,
okay,
yeah. And then number 1 is Germany, or Dickundorf, which means fat and dumb. But it's less than it's fat and dumb. But I like just Dickundorf.
I was gonna ask, like, what's your read on what the bit is? Like, what's Hardy's bit and what's Laurel's bit? And my thought was that Laurel is dumb and Hardy is an asshole. But I guess Laurel being dumb and Hardy being fat is, comedy gold right there.
I mean, having a... Yeah, I mean, that was the... you roll it and shoot it out. Like that's how you did them. I messaged you before this and I was like, this is real. Why I yada. Yeah, like this is peak. Anyway, Music Box. Yeah, I like this. I like this the best out of the 2. It's mainly because it's pretty simple. Sons of the Desert kind of, it's not simple, but it also just kind of has it has moving parts in it, where this one's very like cut and dry. This one
gotta move a piano to the top of a tall staircase.
Before we like start taking some shots at them, I do have to commend, there's a couple good gags in this.
There are good gags.
I like the gag where they get to the top and they've like worked so hard and they're like, oh my, like they finally get to the top and then the mailman walks by and is like, what, did y'all just carry that up the stairs? Like you could take this like back driveway
and they just carry it back down.
And they just carry it back down and then ride it. I'm like, I like that. That's funny. There's a bit where like the piano falls down the stairs and Hardy's hanging onto it and it's a dummy. I love anything with a dummy. Like when
I was less into that one.
I love a good dummy. It reminds me of like Arrested Development where they'll throw like a dummy in something. I love that shit.
Yeah.
You have a dummy in it. It's great.
I liked a lot of the things happening around Laurel and Hardy in this one. Like I thought many of the side characters were far funnier than they were. Like,
I was gonna say Billy Gilbert plays the professor, and he plays Joe Pettibone in His Girl Friday. The guy they're constant. The kind of guy who they're like that Cary Grant's trying to constantly convince. He's like, oh, well, I don't know. Like he's back.
When he's introduced, he like reads off his name, which is like a comically long name, but then he has so many like honorifics and like degrees and things attached to the end of it that it becomes hysterical. And I also really like when they're fighting over the player piano at the end and it starts playing the national anthem. Laurel and Hardy salute, and then he salutes too, not recognizing what he's doing. That was funny. I also liked the policeman at the beginning of the short who, Hardy or Laurel has like kicked some woman in the butt because she was laughing at him. And, she goes to the police officer and says like, well, he hit me or whatever. And you think that maybe the police officer is going to come over and rough him up. But instead he just like kicks Hardy in the butt and says, let that be a lesson to you. That's pretty funny.
That was good.
But yeah, I thought that the vast majority of this was pretty unfunny, I gotta say. Like I posted in the Cinematary Slack after I finished the Music Box, my face every time these motherfuckers do anything, and it was just old Buster Keaton just like glowering at the camera.
The thing with these, and maybe I think it's tough to like compare it to like Keaton or Chaplin or even Harold Lloyd, because I think Harold Lloyd directed his own stuff too. Did he? I might be wrong on that. But like Chaplin and Keaton are like directing themselves, so like they have a little bit more autonomy. The thing that's weird but with both of these is they're just kind of like this like empty space. There's like empty little pockets where, it's, with like Keaton or Chaplin, they're always looking for a gag. They're always like trying to find a gag. And like Laurel and Hardy do the same things. Like they're kind of finding gags, but it seems like much more like it doesn't seem like it feels very like start and stop. Like you're kind of like gag, stop. And like it doesn't feel like the thing's constantly in motion, which makes it feel more like a stage act to me than like a movie.
Like pause for laughter, pause for you to catch your breath.
Yeah, I get that that's part of it. Like, but you constantly have Hardy like doing like wow, that guy, that kind of thing.
Gosh. I got an example of that in Sons of the Desert that killed me in a bad way.
But in both movies, like I think it's just more the directing. Like it just kind of has like these like breaks where you're just like stop breaking, like just like keep the momentum going. And like to me that's kind of what stifled it to me. It was just kind of like whenever it got good momentum going, I'm like this is great, but it like never carried that over. It kind of just like it almost like stopped the machine and then started it back up again. And it kind of was just like after like 15 minutes of that, you're like this is exhausting. I'm tired of this.
I could tell they were trying to stretch some of the gags out and also kind of show off the fact that they were actually doing the physical stunts by not really playing a lot with editing. A lot of these scenes are just one big master shot. You're seeing everybody, you're seeing all the props. There's no like fakery happening here. And so like when a woman slams a glass bottle over Hardy's head, you're thinking, wow, how'd they do that? Like she actually slammed a glass bottle over Hardy's head. And I'm sure maybe the way that they did it is that Hardy was just really good at taking glass bottles to the head because it seems like that's a big part of the act. That also kind of gets into one of the downsides for me, which is that it seems like a great deal of the humor in Laurel and Hardy's routine is just kind of based on you finding them being in physical pain to be funny. And I grew up on Looney Tunes cartoons. I think that like slapstick violence is funny, but there's kind of like a weird uncanny valley of slapstick that this falls into for me, where like it seems like a lot of it actually hurts, and it's not somebody taking an anvil to the head. It's like somebody being dragged down a staircase by their face, and I can kind of like imagine what that feels like in a way that is less funny to me. I don't know.
I think that's a really like Looney Tunes especially is an interesting connection to this more than like because like you could draw like let's connect it to Chaplin and Keaton, or you could be like, oh, let's connect it to the Marx Brothers, or oh, like let's connect it to like Harold Lloyd and other silent comedy people. But that's kind of tough. And so like I think Looney Tunes kind of is like the best comparison to it, because Looney Tunes is very much setting up bits similar to like what they're doing, but then you have to your point, like you have the advantage of Looney Tunes where it's like it's an animated. It
doesn't take place in the real world. It can bend whatever rules it wants.
Yeah, and so like when an anvil falls on Wile E. Coyote, it doesn't hit you as hard as like when in Sons of the Desert when just hit the Hardy's wife is just like unloading every plate imaginable at him, and all he has is a pot on his head.
yeah And I do think that it is worth comparing them to the Silent Clowns, Chaplin and Keaton. And for me, it feels like the main difference is that those characters have a sort of endearing patheticness to them, right? Like you kind of go like, aw, like when Chaplin trips over himself for one reason or another. Like he just kind of seems quaint and cute, right? But Laurel and Hardy, it kind of feels like all the bad things that happen to them are like of their own doing, you know, that like they seem to be their own worst enemies in a way that like reads to me as almost completely unlikable. You know, I said that it seems like Hardy's shtick is that he's an asshole, and that is kind of how he came across to me. Like, I know that there's also this kind of like tender-hearted friendship / like weird like queer platonic marriage that's happening here between Laurel and Hardy. But I don't know, the way that he treats Laurel, it just kind of like comes across as like he's being a jerk all the time.
Yeah,
you know?
after the music box, I was like, how is Laurel not like broke finally and just beating the shit out of this guy?
Right.
I would have done that. Like, what makes you better than me? Kind of. Yeah. I do think, like, as we kind of shift over to Sons of the Desert, I do think it works better in like a shorter helping. We'll probably talk about it in a minute, but this was one of those. This was one of the longest hours I've experienced. Like, I was just like, dang, like what I talked about in the music box, where there's just kind of like these kind of dead pockets. Man, are there some dead pockets in this movie, and it became excruciating. Let's talk about it though. Sons of the Desert.
Sons of the Desert.
So Sons of the Desert, 1933, directed by William A. Sider, from a script by Frank Craven. The film stars Stan Laurel, Oliver Hardy, Mae Bush, Dorothy Christie, and Charlie Chase. Stanley and Ollie want to attend the yearly convention of the Sons of the Desert, a fraternal group to which they belong. When Ollie's wife, Lolly, is that what their actual name was? Lolly? Oh my God. Objects, he feigns sickness, and Stanley gets a doctor to prescribe a fake trip to Hawaii. After Stanley and Ollie revel with the Sons of the Desert, they return home to find out the ship they were supposedly on has sunk in a typhoon, and they're forced to cover their tracks. The fraternal organization seen in the film is styled to resemble the Shriners, known formerly as the Ancient Arabic Order of the Nobles of the Mystic Shrine, which is a club exclusive only to Master Masons of Freemasonry. Oliver Hardy was a Freemason, and Stan Laurel was a member of the Grand Order of Water Rats. I know what you're going to ask. What's the Grand Order of Water Rats? So I added this part because I asked the same question.
Yeah.
Grand Order of Water Rats is a British entertainment industry fraternity and charitable organization based in London. Founded in 1889 by the music hall comedians Joe Elvin and Jack Lodo, the order is known for its high-profile membership and benevolent works, primarily within the performing industries. Its sister organization is the Grand Order of Lady Ratlings, which includes female performers and family members. There you go. Okay. The more you know. The review in Variety commented on the similarity between this film and We Faw Down, that's FAW. We Faw Down, a 1928 two-reel Hal Roach short starring Laurel and Hardy. Another Laurel and Hardy short film called Be Big has a storyline similar to this feature. Stan and Ollie are invited to a party with a club that the two attend. However, they are about to take their wives on holiday for the weekend. Ollie pretends to be ill and persuades the wives to go ahead, saying Stan will stay to look after him, and they will arrive at the holiday location the next day. They get changed into their uniforms, which causes problems such as Stan putting on Ollie's boots by mistake. In contrast to Sons of the Desert and Be Big, Stan is initially unaware of the party at their club until Ollie fills him in and then tells him his sick act was a charade. Modern sources add the following information about the production. The film's working title was Fraternally Yours. Frank Terry wrote additional dialogue for the film, as well as the Sons of the Desert's anthem. The same anthem is used by the International Laurel and Hardy Fan Club, which takes its name and place from the picture. I'll tell you what, that club ain't talking to us at all.
Do you think Ron is a member of the International Laurel and Hardy Fan Club?
I feel bad. I'm on the spot. He probably has told me this. But yeah, Ron, let us know. You'll let me know when I call. I'll relay that information. In contrast, the this current Sons of the Desert Club was founded in the 1960s by Orson Bean, Al Kilgore, John McCabe, Chuck McCann, and John Muccino, with the approval of Stan Laurel. Variety in 1933. Stretched to feature length with no additional plot material, the story is thin to the point of attenuation, but the idea is adhered to, which at least supplies a peg on which to hang the buildup. The latter chiefly belly laughs with a bit of production in the middle, a pre-code Hawaiian dance in a cafe set led by the highly personable young woman who knows it pays to advertise. About the only injection of novelty is a slick bit in which Laurel hysterically breaks down and tells the truth, which gets him a Japanese dressing gown and permission to smoke cigarettes, while Hardy is on the receiving end of the family china and tinware. Why do they know that's a Japanese dressing gown?
It did not read as Japanese to me.
Yeah, what was that detail needed for the review? I don't know. They just don't write them like they used to in the whole. Yeah. So Sons of the Desert. It felt really long. It was a long hour.
It feels long. That's true.
Yeah, it like introduces the organization. And I'll say that's semi-entertaining. Like it's kind of funny. Like as they like work their way. It's a very like Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin bit of like them working their way into the club late and things like that. Then it gets into this like what feels like an hour and a half long of them like establishing the relationships between them and their respective wives.
Yep.
Who, let's just be honest, and let's get this out there right now, that it's two beard relationships.
Oh yeah.
like there's no like marriage here. It's common law. These two guys are together. These two women are together.
They bought adjoining apartments.
Yeah, come on.
What they want to do more than anything is to get away from their wives so they can spend time together.
Yeah,
that Hardy can pretend to be mad at Laurel all the time. But really,
let's just be happy for these proud kings of Pride Month. Congrats to Laurel and Hardy. I think you get an invite in. But yep, that part is so long. It's such a long section. I don't know why we spent so much time establishing this and like getting the fake. I was like, you could have.
We got to set up that they want to go to Chicago, but the wife wants them to go to the mountains, but they think that they have to lie and say they got to go to Honolulu, and we don't need all this.
No, it was too long. Like you could have. It's very much like the essence of like this could have been an email. Like you could have you could have put this together in like 10 minutes, and we've been like, cool. Like we understand the setup now. Like we get it.
And also like so much of the humor does just boil down to like women. Am I right? Like I don't want to make this all about the feminist reading of Laurel and Hardy, but like. It's kind of unmistakably sexist, right? Like the women in these movies are just like nags, right? Who like control their husbands' lives. And
I don't know why they try to do that either. It's just like you two seem so happy with each other. Yeah. One shooting guns, the other. I don't really know what her quality or what her character is, but like
she throws plates.
Yeah, just like you go and do that stuff. Like go, why be like you can do whatever the hell you want, y'all. Like we're not here for you anyway.
Yeah.
This is a Pride movie.
I suppose. I'm not sure what else to say about this movie. Like there's a lot of runtime, but it feels like there are fewer gags than there were in the music box.
Yeah, they just kind of again, it's like the editing style. It's like the editing style and the directing like just kind of clogs it up because like they get to the house the first time and they're doing this whole bit with the doors and like that's fine. Like I get what they're doing, but it feels like we needed a cut. It feels like we need to like cut something because it's like one's going in the one door and the other's coming in from the back door and the other comes out, but it never like feels like it has a payoff. It feels like they just kind of do this whole switcheroo and then they continue.
Oh, he thought he was going to be in the left door, but he was actually in the right door. That's really funny.
Like it's not like the gag ends with like a wow wow.
No, the gag ends with them doing it 3 more times.
Yeah. and then it just picks up the scene. I'm like, what was I was like, what?
Here's my favorite example of a Laurel and Hardy gag that just does not work for me. Hardy's like talking to his wife or whatever. And
whatever the hell he does.
Hardy's in the other room reading a magazine and eating what he thinks is an apple, but it's actually like a wax, like, imitation apple that's just for decoration. And like the way that this gag plays out is so fucking protracted, because he takes a bite of the apple and then he puts it back, and we see that like there's a label on one of the other pieces of fruit that says like wax, do not eat.
Yeah.
And then it goes back to his face for a long time, and you're wondering like, oh, he's about to realize that he's eating wax, and then it's gonna be funny. But he doesn't. He keeps chewing on it, and then he reaches for the apple again, and you think, is he gonna like spit it out like onto the apple and like try to like smush it into the wax? No, he takes another bite of the apple and it's like, oh, this guy's eating wax. That's funny. And then he puts it back. And then we cut to Hardy in the other room talking to his wife, and they notice that he's eating apples. And the wife's like, hey, I was wondering where my wax apples have been going. And then Hardy...
In a way, she's just kind of going, what's that dipshit doing in there?
Yeah. And then Hardy walks into the room where Hardy is. Well, sorry, I'm getting him confused.
Earl.
Hardy walks in the room where Laurel is and says like, you idiot, that's a wax apple. And then like looks at the camera and goes like, get a load of this guy.
Wah,
and, then,
wah,
wah. And like, I didn't need that to be 5 minutes.
Well, and like I was watching that scene and I was like, can you imagine what like a Chaplin or a Keaton would do with that? Like Chaplin would eat it, it'd be like stuck in his mouth, and then he would like he probably would spit it out and like try to like mash it back, but then it would look bad. And then he would like, I'm like, you could have like a whole 5 minute bit that he would do that would be funny, stuff's falling down, like but that one, and I can't tell if that's just like them or like just the directing and editing's really bad. Mm-hmm. I'm honestly gonna say like that's a large part of it, because it's really poorly.
Just edited. Feels like there's no energy to it.
Yeah, it just kind of feels like I'm not getting caught up in their bit, because I'm just kind of like, yeah, okay. I kind of feel like the Tim Robinson sketch where it's like they got the mascot and they're trying to figure out what he does in the game show, and he's like, all right, so you're eating the apple, okay, okay, it's wax. Well, now what are you gonna do with it? What? Oh, you just... And
like, the silent clowns were funny visually, right? The gags are what you're looking at, and sometimes a cinematic technique that's used to capture them. But here we're in the sound era, but it's also like not that talky either. Comparing him to the Marx Brothers is all verbal. It's like rapid fire, like line after line after line. And like, even if you don't find all of them funny, you're going to find some of them funny because there's so many lines. And this is this really weird middle ground where like they are verbally explaining every joke to you. But like the lines aren't funny really.
Yeah. And it's, and yeah, I get tired of like they do something and then Hardy's just like, wah, wah, wah.
Yeah.
It's like proto The Office. Like we got like, he's like Jim Halperding to the screen all the time. And I'm like, that's annoying in that show. That's annoying in that show after a while. It's annoying here. Because you know what? And this is it, you know what annoyed me about it is I'm like, because you know what? You're not better than this other guy. Laurel's fine. Yeah. Honestly, I like
Laurel better.
I like him more too. And you're being a real jerk about it. And like, be nice to this guy.
Yeah. So which one do you think? Are they supposed to both be funny, or is one playing the straight man to the other's comedic brilliance?
I think Hardy's supposed to be Hardy's the straight man, and Laurel's kind of the one who's like messing up, that he's just like, nah.
Yeah, I guess that makes more sense than thinking of Laurel as the straight man, because so much of the humor is also just like Hardy's big performance. I'm not talking about the size of his body, but like the size of his like gesticulations and movements and falls and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that when I'm laughing at them, it is usually Laurel. I like the gag of like him following his wife outside and like leaving his hat inside and then like having to come back around and get the hat, and like then he turns around and he has shut the door on himself. Like that was kind of funny.
Well, like when he gets going, he gets like a bit that's like kind of has some energy to it. Like he kind of taps into that very like vaudeville. Like you can tell that he was like working in the same circles as Chaplin, where it's just kind of like he's got different pieces flowing and he's doing bits and they're pretty funny. But yeah, I don't got anything for Hardy. He seems like a jerk, and they should have one short that's just like Laurel beats the shit out of Hardy.
Yeah, he's obnoxious, and like honestly, so much of the humor just comes across as kind of obnoxious to me too.
And I forgot to mention this. What is up with these motherfuckers in the 1920s and 30s and goddamn bowler hats? Like
they love them. They love
yeah,
them.
Everybody's got bowler hats. A couple of them have to put a little toothbrush, what is it? A little mustache thing right there that gets taken away very quickly in the early 1940s. Mm-hmm. And
wonder what happened to that.
Yeah, but it's just like, I was like, how many goddamn comedians do we have to have that have a little toothbrush mustache or a bowler hat? Like I'm just like, this is peak comedy.
It feels like they're inviting the comparison that does not really benefit them all that much, right?
No, because I'm just kind of like Hardy. Yeah, you look like Chaplin. You look like if Groucho wore a hat, because you all have kind of similar mustaches. I like those two guys better than you. I went on a deep dive after learning who directed Sons of the Desert and realized he directed 5 years later a Marx Brothers movie, and I wanted to watch that movie instead.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you make of the actual Shriner sections of this? I know we already talked about the moment at the beginning where they're like slowly inching past or like pushing past everybody to get to the front row.
Yeah.
For me, maybe the most obnoxious stretch of the movie was when they're actually at the convention in Chicago.
that part's insufferable. You got the guy, and he has the little flower thing.
He's got the flower on his lapel that squirts people with water.
Yeah,
I don't like. Was that a new, like a fresh joke?
I was just like, God,
whatever year this movie came out.
I was like, this is just like being with your weird uncle when you're like 6 years old at a family function. He's just like, who like tells you to pull his finger and he farts. Like I was like, God damn it, this is awful.
I've also like always wondered like what's the deal with the Shriners, right? Like I don't want to do the thing that like everybody does in 2024 where like I get kind of a weird vibe, so there got to be pedophiles, but my main exposure to them is like there's this Shriner temple in Knoxville with a statue of like an old man holding a young boy like enshrined in gold. But like the way this movie depicts it, like it is literally just like the cringiest frat you've ever seen, right?
Yeah.
It's just like old men in a frat like spanking each other with wooden planks.
Yeah, it's this is one side of Freemasonry that we're seeing. You can also see, Robert De Niro's character in Killers of the Flower Moon is a Freemason, so you have that going on as well.
Okay.
Similar spanking though. There's a theme. There's a theme. But yeah, I don't know. I just Charlie is it Charlie Chase? Charlie Chase plays that. That's his role. He's the guy from Texas who's just like bang, bang, like doing that kind of stuff.
I'm gonna call my sister and have a weird voice.
That bit was kind of funny, but when you find out who it is, but again, like it didn't really play. Like I felt like they could have done more with that, where he calls his sister and it's actually Hardy's wife. I felt like you could have done more with that.
Yeah, that's a funny idea.
It's a funny idea. I'm like, all right, like you got all right. So I'm just sitting there the entire time. I'm like, all right, so it's
Let's
his wife.
Workshop this. Come on.
It's his. Yeah. Okay, you're just gonna talk to her. Okay. Well, how's this gonna end? Oh, you're gonna hang up. Okay.
We're gonna go back home and never talk about this.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Also, like in that section, they keep trying to make jokes at one another, and they all laugh at their own jokes. And I can't tell, like, is the joke that I'm supposed to be laughing at that these guys think they're so funny? Because I genuinely cannot tell.
I don't know. I guess.
Because like these jokes are not that different from the jokes in the rest of the movie.
Yeah, is this like making fun of the Shriners? It couldn't be making fun of the Shriners because what's his face was a Freemason, so like he likes the Shriners. I mean, the other guy was a water rat, so that's kind of funny. Yeah, I don't know. It wouldn't be making it's just confusing. It's confusing. I don't like that section either. The only good sections to me are like the kind of beginning until they start getting into like the whole plot.
You like the first gag of the movie?
Yeah, I like the first gag.
Because immediately after that, they move into a discussion of like the importance of being the boss of your wife.
Yeah,
and that's kind of like the crux of the movie from that point on.
But they talk about that, and it's the setup to the payoff of like he gets home and he completely is like submissive to his wife.
Yeah.
So I get that. It didn't totally land with me, but I understood what that was doing.
Yeah.
I also, and then I liked the part. I like the like near the end when they're like trying to hide. Though again, it's just like so wonkily edited, like between them hiding above and like the women below. And like the storm, and then there's a cop, all that kind of stuff. And like you have the whole thing where like Laurel slides down the pole into the water, and you're like, oh, and like so you're like, all right, what's Hardy gonna do? And he like slides, and he goes, spread your legs. And he goes, psh. And he's just like, why did you tell me to spread my legs?
You get your feet wet. Yeah. Also, the cop disappears when they walk into the house. Like, we never hear from that guy again. He's like, well, I guess I'll carry along.
It's a ringing endorsement for law enforcement between these two movies.
Yeah. They're just really harmless.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I didn't hate either of them. I didn't particularly like either of them. They made me want to watch the Marx Brothers and Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
And I feel like, that's fine. Like it's all in the same bucket.
Yeah. But I just feel like it's it kind of makes sense to me that when people talk about classics, like, early film comedy or like classic slapstick, I don't really hear people talking about Laurel and Hardy all that much these days. Like it seems like they are the people you come across after you've already watched the Chaplin movies and the Keaton movies and the Harold Lloyd movies and the Marx Brothers movies. Like then you hit Laurel and Hardy, and it kind of pales in comparison, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think they probably get that. They were super prevalent on like early TV and radio and stuff like that because like they had like you could play the shorts and things like that. I think they probably had a little bit more like rep runs like around the time when Hardy dies and when Laurel dies and things like that. So that's like late. Mm-hmm. It's like, mid 50s and then like mid 60s, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't think the characters, to what we've talked about, I don't think the characters nearly like, I don't really have a personal connection with them. They don't really, like the first person Chaplin was the first one I like kind of locked in on.
Yeah.
And there's I think to the point you made earlier, like there's like this, they're kind of just pathetic, but like but there's like this kind of sweetness to them. Like they're never trying to be like vicious towards anybody. It's just kind of like, they just do silly stuff. They're kind of goofballs.
Yeah.
And like this one, it's just kind of, I think it becomes a little bit more like, because of the nature of the relationship between the two of them and like the nature of like the different bits that they're doing, it just kind of has like this, not necessarily edge, but just kind of this like this more physical nature than what Chaplin and Keaton are doing, even though that's pretty physical, or like the lines, the quick lines of like a Marx Brothers movie. Mm-hmm. It just kind of, to me, it falls between the two of them, and it just kind of, it doesn't have, I think I think to sum it up is it doesn't feel very like cinematic to me. Like I don't feel like it's a very cinematic thing. It strikes me more as like a television thing. Like this reminds me of like the dynamics you would get in like super early television from like the Honeymooners to.
It reminds me of Three Stooges.
Three Stooges.
So much of it is Three Stooges.
And like I think mileage can vary on those, but it feels much more like I've talked about, like the directing and editing is really rough in these, and I don't think that. And so I'm willing to give Laurel and Hardy a bit of a grace, just because I'm like that's probably not helping them with like that, and where like I said, like Keaton and Chaplin, like they're directing their own stuff. They're having a hand on how things are portrayed on the screen, and so. I'll give them some grace with that, but yeah, it doesn't feel very cinematic to me. It feels much more like a vaudeville show or like a road show or like a TV.
Which, show. To be fair, it was. There's vaudeville people, right? But I think that Chaplin made the transition from vaudeville to cinema in a much more like thoughtful way.
Yeah.
Right?
Because the image, in the movie, the image is the most important thing, and so I think that's like, I think I get like how the music box is iconic just because of the images there, but like there's not like something in there that like sticks with me. Seeing the thing fall down the stairs, I guess so, but like I think of like the house falling on Keaton, or the end of the end of Modern Times, where the tramp and the woman are walking away. Like there's like kind of like lasting, like that are. I'm
thinking of like in Modern Times when he's on the skates. He's like going around in circles, and like he gets really close to like this drop off that he doesn't know is there.
or even like when he's in the machine, like it's just like,
oh my god, that are like strapped up to that like feeding device.
And those are like. Those are like good bits. Those are good like comedy sketches.
Yeah.
But at the same time, also like appear well cinematically. And I think that's the kind of, more than anything, that's the difference between those guys and Laurel and Hardy. Is just that Laurel and Hardy, at least, I mean, granted, we've just watched these two things, but like nothing grabs you cinematically in them, and so I don't think that there will be much of a lasting impression. And so that's why, to your point, the original question, like that's why I don't think that they nearly catch on with like people our age or around that, around that time, because like I think especially in like cinephile circles, there's still people who will watch like and engage with like silent comedies and things like this, but I think it needs to like also be cinematic. It needs to kind of leave that impression there, and I don't think this has anything like that.
Man, Ron's gonna be so mad at us.
Yeah, well,
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
we like our podcast because we keep it 100. He probably doesn't. He probably doesn't like it when we say things that he disagrees with, but
that's true. But you keep listening, so whose fault's that? No, I mean you should still listen. We hope you still listen.
I do hate it when we trash movies that are Patreon picks, though, because like people typically don't pick movies that they know we're going to dislike. They typically pick movies that they like and would like to hear us say nice things about. And sometimes we just get on here and is like, this movie was trash.
I think that's amazing. I think that's such a positive note in our chamber. Like if they can say one thing about us, it's that like we're not doing it, we're not doing anything for the money, it's like we'll let you pick a movie, but we will trash it, so you better be careful which, like, and I don't understand, I'll be honest, with all the we've had it a couple times, why people don't just give us like torture movies for us, like
it's only been really the one time somebody made us watch Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, like why don't you use that power to like torture us? And instead, it's like watch this movie that I really like, and it's like we'll know how it's gonna go. So.
There have been some really good Patreon picks over the years. Remember, we had somebody pick Legally Blonde. That movie rocks.
That was good. Shout out to Candace. Thank you so much for doing that. We liked that one. But yeah.
Cam has allowed us to watch like Paprika.
Yeah.
That was really cool. I forget who suggested No Country for Old Men, though I think we may have trashed No Country for Old Men a little bit, which I think is maybe a bit unnecessary.
Yeah. But at the same time, shout out to The Core. I had a hell of a fun time with The Core.
Oh yeah. Also, Air Force One was a Patreon.
And Air Force One. mainly
everybody's coming for Zach's like TNT Sunday afternoon.
Mainly my friend Tyler, who still needs to send me our pick for the next episode. He's got some good ones. So I was going to
ask, what's Tyler's next pick?
I don't know. I've asked him like multiple times and he has not answered me. So
Gladiator.
He might like that. I'm not gonna suggest that to him because I don't really want to watch Gladiator. But yeah, I'll have to see what he comes up with. I liked Air Force One and The Core. I like The Cure as well, but it's fine. All right, well that'll wrap up this episode.
Sorry, Ron.
Sorry, Ron. It is what it is. You can follow us on Instagram at handle @Cinematary and on letterboxd.com/cinematary, where we list all the movies that we talked about in this episode. Shout out to our patrons who have a complicated relationship with us, I guess. Cam, Ron Hayes, shout out. I'm looking at it right now. Lifetime. He's giving us over $500. And we shat on your movie. But thank you.
He's keeping the lights on.
Yeah, keeping the lights on here, buddy. Tanner Huskins, Teresa Marsathi, and Tyler Chandler. We appreciate your patronage, even if we don't seem to. Next week we'll see what Tyler comes up with. It'll be a nice I like the Patreon picks as secret, what the hell is this going to be? But we'll have another Patreon pick episode from Tyler, and then we'll end the year with we'll begin the next year. We'll have a best of 2024 episode.
Mm-hmm. So always a fun episode.
Thank God.
Also, go check out cinematary.com. We got TIFF coverage up there. Lots of movies, lots of reviews. Go check it out.
Lots of good stuff on the old thing. The old thing.
But
yeah. Until then, thanks y'all for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye.